All right, I think I'm live. All right. If you can hear me, say something. If there's anybody watching, there's nobody watching yet. I just tried to Lenovo laptop to see if it works. It looks like a pretty good picture to me, but I don't know what it looked like on the other end. And the wireless access point died in the shed, so I just got that replaced. So hook that into my backhaul link, which I'm using Ubiquity for my backhaul. All right, somebody's watching. Give me a thumbs up if you can see me and hear me. Okay, or just type a comment because I can't see where the thumbs up are on here. This is all different than the MacBook. It's all different than the MacBook. I normally do my live streaming from my MacBook, but I got this new Lenovo. It's a Lenovo Yoga with the i7. It's got the 16 gigs of RAM, the terabyte hard drive, and I'm setting up all my virtual machines on it so that I can program my GM, my Ford, my Chrysler, all under different virtual machines. And I figured I would see if this thing. Oh, I got thumbs up. You must be able to hear me and see me. Okay, got thumbs up. So so just playing around with it. Right now, I'm loading a service pack, so it looks like I gotta restart the virtual machine here. I'm loading Windows 7 32-bit to work with the YTech module that has the K line built into it that can talk to like 2007 back Chrysler without CAN bus. So you have to run a program called DRB3, and then you can talk to those. But you can't really program new modules with it because it's one. But you can get in there and program keys. You can reprogram as is configuration, stuff like that, and you can do all the diagnostics with it. And then I have another YTech module which is supposed to talk to the new Chrysler, but I haven't worked on setting that one up yet. It's a whole lot of fun to set up all these different J boxes and adapters because I usually use the cheap pirated ones, and so when my old Lenovo laptop that I had finally died, and I just had different hard drives that I swapped in and out of it, but it started doing this thing where it just goes to sleep, and I can't figure it out. I've removed the keyboard, I've checked the sleep button, but it'll just go to sleep. Like it'll just like hibernate all of a sudden, and like it's always right when you're getting ready to hit program, it hibernates, and it's not good. So I virtualized the GDS, that GM GDS2 hard drive that I had, and but when I restore when I restore it and bring it up in the virtual machine, it just comes up and says no lease found now, where it used to say it had like a million days left. And I've tried reinstalling, reloading patches. It won't work. So I decided to buy a VX Diag dongle with the new GDS software to load that into its own virtual machine. But then I'll still do my SPS programming from my old pirated JBox, and I'll still run my Tech to Win from my old pirated JBox. So, and those will run right off of my computer directly, and then I'll have a virtual machine for GS. It never ends when you're programming cars. They need to create a standard way to be able to program cars and update modules and things. They just do. They need to have, like, you buy a standard compatible JBox, you plug it into Windows, you go download the manufacturer software or whatever, and you can program it. But there are so many different ways and programs and things that you have to do and different J boxes that you have to get to be able to program modern vehicles. It's insane. And it's like, before you make the investment of getting it all set up and working, you really have to ask yourself, how many of those am I ever going to program? Do I want to program BMWs and Land Rovers? No, I don't want to make that investment because I don't work on them. But so right now I can program GMs. I can program a module in Ford. I programmed an ABS module the other day, and that worked out fine with the pirated IDS. It worked out fine. Um, and the and I'm able to like program keys and stuff like that on Ford as well. And now I'm trying to get the Chrysler set up because I run into a lot of bad tipums on Chryslers, the older ones especially. The 2007 back, Chrysler PT Cruisers and Sebrings and Neons, and people want to be able to go to the junkyard and get a tipum and put it in, and then I need to be able to program it. So that's what I'm trying to get to. I don't know if I have to download software, be online and active with the DRB3 to do that. I don't know how that works yet, but I'm going to get it set up and run it on the laptop and go pull a computer or a tipum or both out of an old Chrysler and then just set them up on, hook the buses up together, set them up and set them here and play with them and see if I can program them or not. But it's crazy how different manufacturers just completely expect you to like buy $1,000 laptop, buy a $1,200 J box or an adapter, and subscribe to their software for $1,000 a year to program a vehicle. I mean, I'm glad that we have that ability to program a vehicle, but it's kind of crazy. I'm trying to see how the chat looks here. Okay, nobody's chatted yet, I don't think. Welcome to live chat. Okay, it's got that over here on the side. Okay, but it's kind of crazy, everything you have to go through. And the problem I also have is I learn how to program a machine, right? Or work through the software to do a certain year, make, model, right? And then I don't see it again for a year. And then I go to get my laptop back out, and it all of a sudden doesn't work, right? It doesn't program. And then you got to figure out what happened, and you got to remember what you even did before, right? You have to like try to remember how you had it set up, and it gets kind of crazy. But I do make money. I make quite a bit of money doing patch programming on Fords for some reason. Like a lot of people like lose their keys and they need to do an add a key, because on Fords you have to have 2 keys to wipe and reprogram. So they just want to do an add a key. Yeah, I make a lot of money on that, or just steering columns that gets changed out. So I have one of those sub 1000 Altel with pretty good bidirectional. Yeah, so a scan tool is different than, you can definitely use the factory software to go in and use it as a full bidirectional scan tool for that makeup model, right? But GM has 3 different pieces to their software. They have SPS, which is Service Programming System. They have GDS, which is programming like 2011 newer. And really, there's some overlap in a few years there, but generally 2010 back is going to be Tech to Win. 2011 newer is going to be GDS. And that's what you use to go in and like do full bidirectional control, get trouble codes, troubleshoot, but also do things like program keys, modules, like door lock modules, things like that. Do cam, crank, relearns, all that kind of stuff. But then if you want to program, you have to get out and go into SPS, which used to be a Java web-based app, but now they just came out with a new app that you download. And so that's kind of annoying because it downloads the SPS, but it also downloads GDS2 and downloads Tech to Win. Now, you can't run them without a subscription, but it overwrites your pirated one. So now you have to run those pirated ones in a virtual machine. And then, your JBox, it loads software, firmware on it from GM. Like when you program, you have to make sure it's updated to the latest version or it won't let you program. So now you have to take and run that, the VCI connection tool or the MDI connection tool. You have to go and rerun the update on each of those virtual machines as well. It's kind of crazy. Things beat the OEM tools. I really do think. The OEM gets you everything that you need to know, but Tech to Win is a piece of crap as far as like if you just want to go in and look at fuel trims and some some O2 sensors real quick. It's a pain in the butt. It doesn't do any graphing, you know, and so I would much rather use a nice graphing scan tool for that. But as far as like actually getting into like when I bled the brakes on my Buick Lucerne, I let it go completely empty, so the ABS pump was empty, and so you have a routine that you go through, which activates the ABS pump and circulates the fluid through it as you're bleeding it, so that you can get all the air out of the system. So that's really handy to have the factory tool for. Cam crank relearn, stuff like that. Although bidirectional scan tools do them, they don't always do them perfect, right? And it can be kind of hit and miss with some of these Altel scan tools and stuff. Although they are getting so much better. I mean, they really are getting that stuff nailed down really well. And, you know, it's still hit and miss as to what you can program keys for. I think right before Keith shut down New Level Auto and went to work wherever he's working now, he had just gotten a key programming tool that would program all kinds of keys for everything. That thing looked really neat. That thing looked like a moneymaker, but I don't remember what kind it was. But, you know, Keith had all those expensive tools, right? He could afford them all. Yeah. Yeah. So that's pretty much what you have to do is, you know, so like right now I'm looking for an older Snap-on Varus that somebody wants to sell cheap that maybe is updated only through 2015 or something. You know, that I can get reasonably priced because Snap-on Varus is really good at doing certain things. And I'd also would like to get the new one Ivan has. I forget. Ivan's got that new scan tool, and it looks really nice and it looks really fast. I'd like to get that because really the only bidirectional control I have right now, like full bidirectional control, is my factory scan tools. Other than that, I just got some cheap scan tools. So I need to get like an Altel or something like that, spend $800 or $900 and get it. But I just haven't wanted to make that investment yet. It's all, you know, you can invest in scan tools and stuff all day long, but you got to be able to make your money back from those. And, you know, I try to hold out as long as I can before I buy new equipment that costs a lot of money. You know, buying my scope kit was like a $2,000 proposition, and that scope, the Pico scope, I applied for the financing, and they basically told me no, you can't finance it. And then they're like, oh, we're sending you to our special financing company, and they called me, and it was like a big ripoff. It was, you know, by the time I made all the payments on this thing, I was going to be paying double for it. It was insane. And I'm just like, yeah, there's no way I'm doing that. I could put it on a credit card at 20% interest and it would be less than that, you know? And so I just ended up taking the money out of my savings and paying for it. And I own it now, and that's really good. But I still don't know if I've used that scope enough to have made back the money that I spent on it yet, because I don't quite a few cars, but I do a lot of just like basic wrenching as well as diagnostics. So you see like every single day. No, my connection's unstable. Wow, boy. It just came up and said my connection is unstable. Somebody must be inside using all the internet bandwidth. But you know, you have to really do a lot of diagnostic work to make the diagnostic equipment pay for itself. But at the same time, when you get the customer that's been to 4 or 5 different shops, including a couple of dealerships, and they always find something to replace, but they never seem to diagnose the actual problem, right? And they are like, oh, you need a new thermostat or you need a new something or another, and they charge them $400 or $500. They do the work, and then they clear the check engine light and send them on their way. And where they finally gets to me after $1,000 spent on it, and I go in and find the actual problem and actually do the work to find it. And it's kind of hard. Um, Sometimes the customers just don't understand how hard that is to track down the actual problem. Sometimes it's a lot of work to track those down, and you have to charge real money for it. And it's easier to explain why it costs so much to the customers that have already spent so much. It's not so easy to explain why it costs so much to the customer that hasn't spent that much, or that would have just taken it, would have just taken it to a dealership, let's say, or taken it, say, to AutoZone. They would have read the check engine light, would have said that this valve's bad or this solenoid's bad, and they would have replaced it and would have fixed it. And yet I charged like $150 to do that diagnosis, right? And sometimes they are just that easy. And sometimes you get lucky, but you don't get that lucky every time. Thoughts on car flipping with the current old used inventory shortage? I've tried flipping cars before. The problem that I have with it, one, you're always going to spend way more on it than you thought you were, right? And so a lot of times your profit just isn't there. Number two is I don't want to have, the only way to do it and make a profit on it is to order cheap parts from Amazon. That's okay if you're going to flip one car every once in a while. I can't have them sitting in my driveway in my way while I'm waiting on parts and stuff, because I can be making money turning other cars. So I'm not really into the whole flipping thing. I mean, I've done it before. I flipped a car or two, and you also run into, you can only flip so many a year in your name in Ohio, and then you have to get a dealer's license, and that's all a big nightmare too. And every car I sell, it seems like they want to bring it back to me forever and expect me to fix it, and they don't want to pay anything. They're like, oh, well, you sold me this car, and it's a year later, and now it has a check engine light. So I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, there is a serious car shortage going on right now. Everybody seems to want to buy a new car, and they're paying as much on some of these trucks. They're paying as much for them used as they used to cost new. It's crazy. I wouldn't do that, but I know some people will. Some people definitely will spend that kind of money. Like I bought my wife's Buick Encore, and I had to look for a while to find the right one, and so by the right one, I mean one that has a reasonable amount of mileage, it's in good shape, it's one owner, the Carfax is relatively clean. It might have some minor little front end damage or something, but not, it's got a clean Carfax. And I needed to find one that had been sitting on the lot for a while, because that's how you go in and negotiate a good deal. You're like, hey, this thing's been sitting on the lot 90 days. You're going to make me a deal on it, right? And Car Gurus tells you how long they've had it sitting. It took me a while to find it, but I finally did find it at a car dealership. And, I've bought cars at this car dealership before, and they used to have like 300 or 400 cars in their used lot. They had 22. And so, I mean, they came down on it a little bit, but they weren't coming down on it as much as I wanted. But it's understandable. There's a used car shortage. But I got it about 2,000 or 3,000 below book. So I was pretty happy with that. They always ask, like, how are you going to pay for it? Well, we can look at financing that for you. Like, no, I'm not financing it. Well, how are you going to pay for it? And I'm finally like, I'm green $100 bills. Then they act all weird about taking that. Like, well, this is a lot of money. I'm like, I know you can be more than happy to take half this much for the car. If it's too much money for you to handle. But yeah, she wants something with heated leather seats, so she's got her heated leather seats now. It's got the little Chevy Cruze turbo in it, the little 1.4 liter or whatever. Those aren't the best engines in the world, but they're not the worst either. They're relatively easy to work on. Turbos are relatively easy to do. The turbos don't seem to blow up as long as you replace the oil feed tube to them every once in a while. Usually that oil feed tube gets plugged up with the carbon. And the timing chain probably need done around 100, 120,000, something like that. No big deal. I mean, I've seen plenty of those engines scatter when the timing chain has gone crazy on them. So, yeah, I don't want to let it go too long. And my Buick Lucerne has got transmission fluid leaking out that axle seal. I got to get that done too. And I still got that Chevy Blazer sitting in my driveway. I just haven't had the time or the energy to work on it so far this week. So I had COVID. I finally got over my 12-day quarantine from having COVID on Monday. So, I mean, I think I don't. So the thing is I took the COVID test and it came back negative, but I'm pretty sure from all the symptoms I had the COVID. Because like 3 days into it, it's like somebody turned off my sense of smell and taste, like a light switch. It just straight up turned it off. Couldn't smell anything. And then I got through it, and I started feeling better, and I started being able to smell a little bit again. But when my smell first came back, like things smelled different. That smoke smelled like soap, But now it's turned to normal. But it's not. My sense of smell isn't as strong as I can at least smell things. I at least know if I stink too bad before I go to work. Are you gonna flip some cars there, Jaspel? I mean, it is a money making opportunity. Like my son's Honda. I bought that car from the junkyard for $200. They sold it to me at their cost, but they're not going to do that all the time. They're going to want to at least double their money, right? So probably going to pay $400 for that kind of a car. Then I had to spend a couple $100 on a rack and pinion and put that in. Then I had to spend $170 on a gas tank. Then I had to spend another $100 on an alternator. I had to spend $30 on an alternator bracket. I had to spend then I replace the blower motor, and then all the other little odds and ends and pieces I got the junkyard and stuff for it. That car might sell for $1,000. Might. I'd have that much in it, and that much in labor in it. I mean, I guess if you can come across the right cars cheap, then yeah. And I have gotten. I got my Buick Rendezvous for $200. I bought my Buick Lucerne for $400. I don't come across those deals every day. I just occasionally fall into a deal. You can't keep ahead on those, and only 6 per year. Just get lucky. Yeah, winter is coming, and that means I got to finish cleaning out the garage, and I have to work on smaller stuff that fits in the garage. Like somebody called me the other day. They got like a full-ton dually, and they're like, "Oh, I just want to replace the brake pads on one side because I already replaced them on the other side, but now this side's grinding." And it's like, no. First of all, I don't like working on big trucks. I really don't. I really don't like working on trucks. I like working on smaller cars, and I'm not going to replace just your brake pads on your chewed up rotor. I'm not doing that. Like if I do brakes, I do them right. I do them right and do them the best I can because I don't want you to go out there and get in an accident and come back and sue me. Brakes are relatively easy to do, but they're relatively easy to forget to tighten a caliper bracket bolt or something, which I've done. And then somebody ends up, luckily they didn't get in an accident. They went off the side of the road though. But luckily I was able to fix it and get them back on the road. You just have to be careful when you do that stuff. I mean, that's from that perspective, it's probably better to fix them up and sell them as used cars. You'll sell it, right? Um, you're not as liable for it that way if something goes wrong. But oh yeah, that's the other thing. Brakes. So had a couple $100 in brakes all the way around too. And at the end of the day, you still have a 1996 Honda or 96 or a 97 Honda with 222,000 miles on it. I mean, how how much you gonna sell that for? I think I don't know. I think maybe if you were working on a little bit higher end cars, you have more money to invest and go to auctions and buy them, right, and get them well below book value. But auction cars can be hit and miss. I mean, I fix enough auction cars for buy here, pay here lots. I'm just like they're money making dude. Like they buy something with weird electrical problems. They have me come in and fix it, and then they sell it and they double their money. But yeah, I mean, I guess I could do that. I looked into getting a dealership license, and you can't get like a dealer license to work out of your home. You have to actually have a separate building with an office that's zoned properly and all this other crap, and you have to pay for a bond. It just gets way too expensive. And I guess I could probably flip 6 in my name and 6 in my wife's name or whatever the limit is. But I don't know. We'll see. I mean, if I come across a decent car that's cheap that I can fix that I can make money on, I'm not against it. But I'm not really out there looking to flip. I think what I'm going to do here soon is I'm still just saving up my money towards this end, but I'm not going to do it right now because the housing market is so insane right now. But I want to go buy some of those cheap, like $20,000 houses in a bad neighborhood, put a minimum of work into them, and rent them, and just turn that into monthly recurring revenue. I think I want to do the landlord thing, but I'm glad. I was looking at doing that pre-COVID. I had a house picked out. I was getting ready to close on it, and then things went south with the COVID. And I decided, like, I'm just going to hold off. And then they did the whole, like, oh, you don't get paid rent if you're a landlord thing. That would have killed me. I mean, houses aren't free, and fixing them up is not free. And so if you make that investment, you got to get your money back out of it. And it's really not fair for the government to come in and say, yeah, they don't have to pay rent and we're not paying you rent. So you're just landlord. I mean, like, landlords have to make money. Like my son was like, oh, well, I don't have to pay my rent either because of COVID, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, you need to pay your rent to your landlord because he rented to you when nobody else would. And he hasn't missed a payment through all of this. So I did have to help out a couple of times when his hours got cut back. But his rents have been paid every month. So, and now that they're out of that, these people owe all this money and now they're getting evicted. Yeah, commercial real estate's really weird. It's like they have all these empty storefronts everywhere from everybody that went out of business, but they still want full price for the stuff. And that's because a lot of times on commercial real estate you have investors that go in together on it. And in order to lower the rent or do something like that, all the investors have to agree and they have to be given a chance to get out of it. And there's all this weird stuff that happens, especially like in places, big cities like New York and stuff. So a lot of times you'll see they'll offer you a discounted rent for a year. Like it'll offer you a half price rent for a year, but the lease has to eventually get back to the full rent price because that's what they've agreed that they're going to rent it out to for their investors, and their investors need to make a profit, right? So that's why like commercial real estate's really tricky a lot of times. And we have this lawyer here in town. He's the kind of lawyer for a combine if you grease him up just right. I mean, he's a dishonest son of a gun. His name's Legos, and he owns most of the commercial real estate in this city. And I looked at renting from him when I was looking at buying a shop, and it was going to be insanely expensive. He just was kind of a butthead about it, so I decided not to do that. Um, that was like for a computer shop back when I was doing the computer consulting stuff, and I ended up going into a partnership with somebody else that had a shop, and that partnership went really bad. It went really bad. But my old partner ended up dying. But uh, I'll tell you, like partnerships in business, man, they seem like you're all gung ho and you're all on the same page, and everything's going to be great. The most important thing that you can do before you go into a partnership is go talk to a lawyer. And you're going to spend 99% of your time with that lawyer talking about how you dissolve the partnership when it doesn't work. Because that's the most likely thing that's going to happen, right? And it sucks because a lot of times you become friends with the people that you're partners with, and then there's some different decisions being made and some money that gets to be owed, and it just turns out south real quick. And you just have to bail out. My partner, it turned out really well at first, but then one day his wife was like, I want a divorce. And he went through the whole divorce thing and the whole adult friend finder trying to find somebody else thing, and it got real crazy, and he just wasn't doing any work. But and so basically all of the stuff that came in to work on the bench work from home users, screen replacements, motherboard repairs, all that kind of stuff, that all got split 50-50 between us. But he had the credit card processing, so all the money just went into his account, and at the end of the month he's supposed to settle up and give me half. And it worked out fine at first, but then after he started going through that divorce, he was just out spending money. He wasn't paying any attention to the bills. And then pretty soon the electric company is showing up, like, we're gonna have to shut you off. Like, how much do we owe? And I'm writing a check out of my account for it. And then I'm like, okay, where's my half of the money? He's like, oh, I owe you $4,800. There's no way. Like, yes, we did nearly $10,000 worth of business. You owe me 4,800. And he's like, well, I don't have that much. And it's just like, starts going south real quick, because then I can't pay my bills. And then I'm so overloaded with all this work coming into the shop that I've been neglecting some of my business customers. So I lost some of my business customers over it, and then I'm not getting paid. So I just packed my stuff up and left one day. I took one of his employees with me and paid him directly. And I just went back to running it out of my garage again. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, we split it 50-50 at first because we were both supposed to be doing half the work. And what it turned into is him out hanging out with his adult friend finder friend, or doing whatever he was doing and not coming to work. And me in the shop trying to run the counter, trying to fix computers and working. It was like the year that I didn't see my house in the daylight, right? And just working, doing all the work. And then he doesn't even come up with half of my money. It's like, wow, this isn't working. It's not working for me. I'm sorry. And I liked him. He was a good guy. And I tried to continue to be friendly with him. And then things got really ugly because we had this doctor's office. And they really liked working with me. They didn't like working with him, but they were originally his customer. And, they're like, well, we're not staying with him and we'd like to work with you. And so I was like, well, okay. That didn't go well. That didn't go well at all. But, and then like I ended up dumping that customer off because they were all out in space. They just wouldn't respond to me. My questions, like I would be like, you need to buy a new UPS for the server. Here's the part number. Here's this. Here's that. And then 2 months would go by, and they'd be like, why does our server keep going down? Because you need new battery backup. I sent all the parts and quotes over. And then they go on and they order the wrong one. and it's a cyber power, and it like whenever the air conditioning flickers, it reboots the server. And then, I'm just like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done. Like, you guys can't listen to me, look at the quotes that I give you, and realize that there's a reason that I give you a quote for an APC UPS that's a smart UPS, and they're like, well, if we get this APC UPS, is it going to fix our problem? I'm like, it should. I'm like, well, should's not good enough. We need to know that it will. We're a medical facility and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, well, okay. Can you guarantee me if I take my blood pressure medicine that I'm not going to have a heart attack? No, you're going to say it should help. Yeah, that is your. So, like, I'm not really into the whole cloud thing yet because where I work at now, their motto is we like sunny days, not cloudy days. So they try to keep everything in house. And so, yeah, I'm not really up on the cloud stuff. And you know what? I don't care if I ever get up to speed on the cloud stuff. There was a day when I was right on the cutting edge of technology, right? Back in the days of Novell NetWare and Windows 3.11, man, I was always up to the latest. Like, and these days I'm like, man, I only got 5 or 6 years till I retire. I don't care. Yeah, that's my goal right now. What I'm trying to do is work out streams of income. So I have a customer that I do backups and disaster recovery solution, and I manage it for him. I get monthly stipend from that. I get monthly income from YouTube. I make some money working on cars. I want to get a rental property, become a landlord, get some income on that, so I can have revenue coming in from multiple streams, and then I can just retire. And if somebody's like, oh, you got to get the thing in the arm or we're going to have to fire you, I'm like, yeah, fire me. I don't care. That's where it's coming to, is working for a company just isn't where it's at anymore. You need to go and do the stuff for yourself and make your own way. But yeah, I had the COVID and I still haven't gotten the thing in the arm, and I'm not going to. And the COVID wasn't a big deal for me. I know it can be for some people, but I basically had like a really weird feeling, stuffy nose. And I had a bunch of times, like when you swim and you get water up your nose, that feeling, it kind of felt like that, like off and on for an hour, like for several days. And I coughed just a little bit. I took some Cipro and some methylprednisone to keep it from getting into my lungs because I'm a smoker, so I get bad bronchitis a lot of times. And I felt like crap. I was really tired. I was really sleepy, but I got over it. So, I could have went in the hospital, ended up on a ventilator and died. But I know there's like a very small chance of that happening for me because I'm younger. So, I chose to do it my own way. And even like the doctor was like, oh, yeah, you don't need an antibiotics because this is a virus. I'm like, no, I always get a secondary infection of like a sore throat, and then I get bronchitis and I start coughing. So I want to take the antibiotics. And he's like, no. I'm like, I also would like to go on a steroid ahead of time just to keep my lungs healthy. I know it suppresses the immune system. It's going to spike my sugar a little bit. We'll manage that. But I want to, be on the steroids to keep it from getting into my lungs. I said no. And I said, well, that's fine. I have Cipro and methylprednisone at home in my preps. So it's like, I'm not asking you for a prescription. I'm just letting you know I'm going to be taking those things. Just because the COVID can turn into like an inflammatory type pneumonia, and steroids is really good for inflammatory type pneumonia. I mean, that's what I did. But yeah, I mean, it took me until now to actually catch it. So that's kind of crazy, especially knowing that I have been around people with it. Like I've been around people that were coughing on me that had it. So, like I said, my test came back negative though. So, but those tests aren't always real accurate. So, and I had the exact symptoms of it. So I think I had it, but I'm not 100% sure. I guess I could go and get one of them antibody things. Yeah, the pneumonia. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's an inflammatory pneumonia, but they don't treat it like an inflammatory pneumonia with steroids and stuff. So I don't know. I'm no doctor. I just know like a few things I've seen on the other channels, um, like the Rumble and stuff, and the UGE tube, uh, where they don't block all those kinds of videos. And I just kind of did some of my own things. The other thing is I got a nebulizer, and I put the colloidal silver in and breathed some of that in. I think that helped too. Yeah, so it's going to depend. We haven't got a mandate, but we do have more than 100 employees. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm not getting the thing in the arm, so that's going to leave me with not getting it and having them fire me. And I'm going to try to have them fire me so that I have a chance of maybe collecting some unemployment. But I'm sure that once these mandates come out and everybody starts getting fired, they're going to be like, oh, well, you can't collect unemployment if you got fired for that. I'm just betting. So, um, yeah, I'll probably be doing more car work, and I'll probably be doing a lot more videos and trying to bump up my content and get a little bit more monetization from YouTube as well. Um, I mean, what else can you do, right? And then I'll be dipping into that money that I've been saving up to buy the rental property, and as I need to. But I mean, we own all our vehicles. We own our house free. Well, yeah, we have just like a few $1,000s left on a HELOC loan on the house that we inherited. Um, but that's no big deal. It's like $100 a month as the minimum payment, and we always pay more than that. Um, but that and utilities and insurance. I mean, so like we own everything. We don't carry a whole bunch of debt. So that's always a good thing. Um, and I can step up working on cars. I can call back some of the buy here, pay here lots that I just quit calling back and see if I can get them back as customers. Uh, a lot of them just didn't pay me. So, I mean, I have to get paid. We have to work that out. But I'm sure that I've made them pay long enough now. Like they probably have a whole lot full of Chevy Cobalts that don't run. They'll probably be like, yes, we'll give you whatever you want. Just please come back and fix these. I mean, that's good money. A lot of times I just charge 150 for the diagnosis, and if I have to do programming like replace a body control module, I'll charge another hour 150 to go back out once they get the body control module, and then I charge an extra like $43 for downloading the software and I program it. And generally I don't do the work, right? Like I don't turn wrenches when I do those kind of diagnostic jobs. They have mechanics to turn the wrenches. I just go in and diagnose the problem and tell them what they need to replace. So that's always nice too. It's always nice to be able to go out and make money and not get greasy. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there aren't any good diag people around here. There just aren't. I mean, I'm sure there's got to be one or two, but I haven't found them. Um, and most of the shops around here are just taking the gravy work. They're popping a scan tool on there and being like, oh, it says something about oxygen sensor. Let's replace the oxygen sensor. They get right 60% of the time. They still seem to charge the customer the other 40% of the time, and they send them on down the road. And the check engine light comes back on, and they're like, oh, I don't know, you're gonna take it to the dealer. There must be something else wrong with it, and they just take the money and run. And then they're still getting all the gravy brake work and stuff like that. But it is what it is. And like I said, like most of the time, with the scan tool, it'll be right about 60% of the time. He'll replace a coil pack or whatever for a misfire and get lucky. And I mean, I guess I don't have a problem. Like somebody wants to try that first. If somebody wants to try going to AutoZone and just replacing a coil pack before they come and pay me 150 to diagnose it, I don't see anything wrong with that. Like I get it. People don't have a lot of money. They want to try it, but I'm still here as a resource for them. And I take a different approach than most mechanics, right? Most mechanics, if you walk up and start talking to them, you're like, well, my car it's shaking and the check engine light's on. I got a misfire code. What do you think I should try? Most mechanics be like, I don't know. We have to diagnose it. We have to hook up a big fancy scan tool, charge you lots of money. I'll be like, well, you can take it to AutoZone, have them read the check engine code off of it. If it has a misfire, just you try a coil pack and a spark plug and see if that fixes it. If it doesn't, then you can bring it back to me and I can look at it, or then you can try an injector. Run a compression test, and I just tell people generally what they need to do to kind of diagnose their own problems. And I find that 99% of the time, when you tell somebody, when you take the approach of trying to help them find their own problem, they'll eventually just, yeah, we're just going to pay you to do it. But if you take the approach of, well, it's going to cost this much and we got to hook up our big fancy scan tool and I'm the only one that knows what I'm doing, then they usually just like run to AutoZone and try to fix it themselves just to prove that they can or something. I don't know. So I always take the approach of trying to share and help any way that I can. Now I don't go through hours of talking to somebody for free, but I always try to help if I can. It's kind of annoying sometimes on videos that I do. A lot of times I try to take the process that I try to go through the troubleshooting process in my video, right? This is how we troubleshoot it. And it seems like people just skip to the end and they're like, oh, I had a broken wire. And then they try to replace the same broken wire on their car. Like, it wasn't the broken wire. What do you think it is? And it's just like, I know that people are just looking for a fast solution, but sometimes I don't know what it is. I had a lady the other day leave a comment like, I did this Buick LeSabre. It had a bad tire. I replaced the tire. It was shaking real bad. I replaced the tire. Shaking went away. And the lady like sends me a message and is like, well, I took it to the tire shop and they said there's nothing wrong with the tire. And it just started shaking when I pulled off the highway. So what do you think the problem is? They said I should take it to a mechanic. And I'm like, well, you could have a hung brake. You could have a bad axle, bad wheel bearing. You know, it could be a number of things, or it could be a bad tire and the tire shop just didn't look at it the right way, you know. But I don't know what to tell you, unless you want to jack it up and start tearing it apart and look at it yourself. You probably would be better to take it to a good mechanic. Yeah, yeah, I got over it. It wasn't really that bad for me. Um, I think my wife and my son both had it, and I didn't realize that my son had it because he didn't tell me until after he felt better that he couldn't smell. And my wife doesn't have a very strong sense of smell anyway because they had to cauterize inside of her nose when she was a kid because she got nosebleeds and it kind of killed the nerve endings. So she might not have known. Um, and then I kind of caught it. And at first, it just kind of felt like I had like a little bit of allergies or a cold or something for a couple days. I just took some cold medicine and kept on working. And then it started getting worse. I started getting a little bit of a fever. I'm like, uh-oh. And then when I couldn't smell anymore, I was like, oh, I probably got the COVID. So I went and got one of those do-it-yourself COVID tests, and it came back negative, but which kind of sucks. I don't know. I think if you test positive for it, then you get the 2 weeks off paid. Um, since I tested negative, I had to take them unpaid, but I only took like 3 days total unpaid, and then and then they let me do the work from home thing, so I just got the laptop out and work from home. So I still have like 4 days of vacation left this year, which I can let roll over to next year. I can use them this year. I have a feeling we're gonna take a trip to Florida this winter. It was really, really nice going to Florida for a week. Um, and I did it over New Year's so that my son was on vacation. We went, and then I only had a couple days of vacation left. But then once the new year hit, I had all my vacation renewed, so I could take some more time. And we went down to Busch Gardens, and that was crazy because everybody else had the same idea to go to Busch Gardens while their kids were out of school. And it was crazy busy there. It was crazy busy. Not quite as busy as Kings Island was on this last Halloween hunt, but close. And but we still have fun. We didn't really. Most of the rides I don't fit on. The ones that I thought I could fit on, a lot of those were closed, um, and there was really long lines. But we had a lot of fun anyway. Like we rode the water rides and stuff, and have like this complete like zoo at Busch Gardens. You can go see the giraffes and everything, and we really had a lot of fun. Even though I think I only rode the mouse coaster and like it's like a whitewater canyon, you know, the big round things. They call it something else, but we rode that a few times, and yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it was so nice. So then we also went to like this marine museum, and I got to pat a dolphin on the head, and then we went to Clearwater Beach. It just had a lot of fun, and the whole time back here it was like snowing and crappy, and we're like, it's 72, is it beautiful? In fact, when we were driving home, uh, right before I crossed the state line from Florida into Georgia, it hit like 87. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And then we got home later that night, and it was like uh, 22 degrees and snowy and crappy. Crap, we're back in Ohio. Hard to believe this morning I was driving along with the windows down. Then I had to roll up the windows to turn on the air conditioning. By the time we got back to Ohio, we're like running the heat full blast, you know. Oh, even from northeast Ohio. Okay, so like up by Mansfield, Akron, Cleveland. I usually don't get much farther north than Mansfield, but I'm from Springfield, then kind of the western, southern part of Ohio. So pretty much complete opposite from you, east of Akron. Yeah, yeah. I've been to Akron a couple of times. I had a job interview there once, but they really weren't paying enough for me to make that move, and I helped a friend pick up a radio tower from there once. It's a big Pyrod, like a 200-foot Pyrod freestanding radio tower. Yeah, we took it. They took it down in 20-foot sections. We loaded on a 16-foot trailer and we hauled it back. He still has that tower, I do believe. I don't know if he's got it put up again or not. He spent $2,700 on the bolts that went in the concrete for it, and then he moved, and then now he's moved again, and now he's back in a place where I think he has room to put it up. But I don't know if he's. But yeah, I'd like to have a big radio tower to put some ham radio stuff on, but I don't like to climb, so I'm probably not going to. I just got my little 2-meter 440 out here in the shed on a little antenna on a mast on the side of the shed, getting some local repeaters. And I don't even really do that anymore. It's mostly just here for emergencies. So I mean, I'm just a technician, so I can't get on a lot of the HF bands, at least not the voice part of them. And I don't know Morse code really, so I mean, I know how like to do my call sign in Morse code and do a CQ and some of that stuff, but I don't really know Morse code that well, and I don't know. So I just figure I have plenty of ham radio friends that are generals and extras, and I can get a hold of them on the repeaters if I need to in an emergency, and they can on the HF bands for me. Report back the news. It's important to have some type of other communication so that you know um, cell phones seem like really great and convenient until they don't work. And I learned this the other day at Kings Island, and my oldest son was with us, and he's going off like, "I'll be back in a half hour once you guys are through the line." And he goes off and he doesn't come back, and I'm trying to call him. The calls aren't going through, the texts aren't going through, because there's like 20,000 people all crammed into Kings Island, all trying to use their cell phone, right? And it was just the network was overloaded, and the so I'm just like, man, I should have just brought my two little Baofeng handhelds. I got these, I think they're Baofengs, but they're a little thin, quarter watt, 440, 70 centimeter band handhelds. I'm like, we could have just hopped on those and talked. Until you don't have communications, you don't really realize how important communications can be. Yeah, the repeaters are pretty reliable. So, I mean, it depends on what kind of a tower they're on, right? Some of them have solar power. Some of them have solar backup power to where they don't run the amp. They just run the repeater barefoot until the commercial power comes back on. But, I mean, they're pretty reliable. And so the other thing that I can do is I can take a mobile. I've done this before in an emergency, where you take a mobile and put it in your car, and then get an extendable mast and put it on a steel plate, right? And put the extendable mast on the steel plate, run that up 20 feet or whatever, and then put your mobile on crossband repeat so that it receives a signal in on 2 meters and broadcasts it back out on 440, and then the people can talk in on 2 meters, but they're listening on their radios on the 440, right? So then you can make a poor man's repeater really quick that way. You can do that with a solar panel, a car battery, and a crossband unit, and some coax, and an antenna up the tree. You can put a repeater up really quick. But I mean, there's a lot of repeaters out there, and they're all pretty reliable, and a lot of them are linked together. And these days they like to link them over the internet, which if the internet's down, that's not going to work. But there's still plenty that have regular links. That they're running 2 meters and they got a link on 900 or 220, linking them to another repeater in the next city over or whatever. So you can get some distance on the repeaters. I used to run a repeater down in Centerville. I built it out of an old Master 2. It had a 100-watt PA in it, but I turned it down to like 55 watts just because you don't want to run it full tilt, because repeaters have a tendency to stay transmitting for a long time. But yeah, it worked. It was on a cell tower in Centerville. My old boss, took it and sold it to somebody. He also gave away my service monitor, my IFR service monitor, which is really expensive. It had a spectrum analyzer built into it and everything. And we both owned half of it. I bought it, and he paid to get it repaired. And so we just said, oh, we'll just each own half of it. And then he fired me. And then I went back a year or so later. I'm like, oh, hey, I need to use my service monitor. Oh, I gave that away to somebody. Really? But yeah, ham radio is a whole different world to get into. But you can get a technician class license and generally learn how to talk on repeaters and do some stuff. But you're going to have to get a general class to talk on the HF, and that's where you can bounce your signal through the atmosphere and get to the other side of the planet. They've dropped the code requirements. Now, you used to have to get your code before you could talk on those bands. What they've done now is they made it so technicians can transmit on some of those HF bands, but they can only transmit with code. And if you get your general class, then you can transmit on the voice part of the bands. So, but in an SHTF situation, I don't care, right? Yeah, Hamtech was super easy to get with electronics, no more. Yeah, yeah. So back when I was looking at it at first, they still had the code requirement, and then I was like, actually had like a little Morse code key thing, and I was practicing my code, trying to learn it, and I had like this record that would, it would just play the sound like da 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 C, and so um, and you would kind of learn it that way, and then like right in the middle of trying to learn it, they dropped the code requirement, so I went and took the test. And you used to go around, and then they still had a code, so you had technician, and you had technician with code that opened up a little bit more for you in the general, and so you used to call everybody a no-code tech, right? Like, oh, I'm just a no-code tech. But now they dropped the code requirement altogether, so you're just a tech. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's some interesting stuff to know there, but generally, your ham radio, you can go and buy the question pool, right? You go buy the question pool. I passed plenty of computer certification tests this way too, except it's not technically legal on a computer test. But on the ham radio, they actually publish the question pool. You can go buy the question pool, and then you can just go through all 400 questions or whatever and just memorize what the answers are to each one. Maybe you have some flashcards or whatever, and then go take the test and pass it. And it's really easy. It's better to actually read it and learn it and understand it because you'll want to know it. But you can basically go get your technician class license really easy. You can program in a few repeaters to your HT and start talking. I mean, there's some things that you kind of need to know, but if you get on a repeater or you get on the air and you make an operating mistake, there's plenty of grumpy old men out there that will tell you all about the mistake that you made, so you'll know not to make it again. It's just because the average ham radio operator is somewhere between age 60 and dead. And they usually get really grumpy. And ham radio operators are notoriously cheap. They're notoriously kind of grumpy. Yeah. And they get on the repeaters and they get to knowing each other and talking to each other, and they don't necessarily like it when somebody new gets on the repeater. No, I'm not vaxxed. Yeah. I just got over the COVID, so I'm sure that I have plenty of the antibodies. And I don't know, like I don't know what the deal is with the vaccine. I really don't know. I think that the problem that I have isn't that I think it's dangerous necessarily, that it's going to kill me, that's going to hurt me. The problem is it could. In very rare circumstances, it can cause problems. And the problem is there's no recourse if I get those problems. So I played it and said, hey, if I get the COVID, I'm most likely going to live. And so I decided to live, right? And not, but if I die from the COVID, I have life insurance. My family's going to be taken care of, right? If I take the vaccine and I die, I mean, I guess I would still get the life insurance, right? If I die, but what if I take the vaccine and I have a stroke, right? And you know what? I have high blood pressure. I smoke. I'm overweight. I'm 47 years old. I could have a stroke any day. It could have nothing to do with the vaccine, right? So proving that would be impossible anyway. but you can't even attempt to sue them. Nobody's going to come along and help pay your bills while you're a vegetable from a stroke, right? I mean, I have disability insurance. I guess that would help. But I just decided that I'd rather take the chance on getting the virus. That's how I did it. So, yeah, the new guy, I hate the new guy with the Baofeng. Yeah, I have a Baofeng HT, and I'm trying to see what brand this one is. It's some other Chinese brand, my mobile. And I got a couple of the little mini Baofangs. They're just 70 centimeters. And they're actually pretty decent radios. I mean, you plug in the USB cable and load the software and program up all your frequencies, and you're good to go. I mean, my first ham radio I ever had was a Kenwood THD7AG or something, a little HT. I wanted to get an HT because I could still hook an external antenna and mic to it and use it in the car, but I could also walk around with it. And it was a really nice radio, but it did not do everything the Baofeng does. You know, um, yeah, it just didn't. And then I had another Kenwood after that. I had a Radio Shack radio that was just a 2 meter, and then I went to a Kenwood dual bander. And then I sold the dual bander when I got married because I got fired right before I got married and I had to have money to pay for the wedding. So I sold all my ham radio equipment. And then I bought like a Tate commercial radio that you could reprogram. And it was a 2 meter one. So I could reprogram it for 2 meters. And I used that radio in my car for a long time. It had a 12.5 kilohertz spectrum on the voice part rather than 25. So your volume was a little bit low when you went into a repeater, but people could still hear me. The deviation's what they call that. Yeah. Oh, well, I suppose I better get off of here. It's dark out now, and I'm getting thirsty. And I have a freezer, but I don't have anything to drink out here. I did buy this other freezer back here, and it's full of food now. Just because we have the stand-up freezer in the house, and that was getting way too full. So, like, what I do is I still occasionally find meat and stuff on sale or on clearance because it's getting ready to expire, and I buy that up in bulk and I freeze it. And so, as I find good deals, I've been buying them here lately because I know the price of meat's going to skyrocket. And so I filled up the freezers in the house, and I'm like, no, I don't have any room in the freezers in the house. So I bought that off of somebody for $50 and filled it up with stuff. It just lives out here in the shed. And the good thing is in the wintertime, it won't use energy staying frozen out here. So that's always, you can't have enough food on hand. I take that back. You can have enough food on hand. So back when I lived at my old house, I had nearly 5 years of food storage in multiple locations. And it just got to be an unmanageable nightmare trying to keep that amount of stuff organized. And, you just got to where you had so many preps, you couldn't find anything. And then I'm looking around and everything's like on the floor and it's a mess. And I'm like, I have turned from a prepper into a hoarder. So when we moved to this house, I cleaned a lot of that out. And I now typically keep about a year's worth of food tops. And I've pared down my preps and I've gotten rid of like things that I'm probably not going to need or that I could use something else in place of it. So I like to be prepared, but you can't buy everything in the world that you're ever going to need and store it. You're right. You have to. Yeah, you have to. And I went into quite a bit of debt buying all that stuff too. Yeah, my finances were pretty bad there. My business had failed. That house was in foreclosure. We were going to be getting kicked out of it, and then we ended up inheriting this house. And the nice thing is in Ohio or I don't know, whatever. But since it's our primary residence, we didn't have to like pay the difference. It didn't go on our credit as like a. It wasn't a collection where they could come take the money, and we didn't have to pay taxes on it because it was below a certain amount, and so we didn't have to claim that as income. And then this house is in my wife's name. That house was only in my name from before we got married. So as long as I didn't buy another house within so many years, then I didn't have to pay the income tax and all the penalties and stuff on it. So, um, we bought it. I bought it in, oh, well, I'm trying to think, 2005. Well, no, hang on. When did I buy that? When did we get married? We got married in 2006, and I had just bought the house. And then the bubble pops, like within that next year or something. After I bought it, the bubble popped, and it was worth half of like what I paid for it. And the value went back up a little bit, but it never really went back up. And I'd taken this Band-Aid loan at the last minute because I paid off with the collection, and it actually made my credit score go down, so they couldn't give me the FHA, so they gave me this Band-Aid loan, where the first interest rate was pretty, it was high, but it was reasonably, I could make the payment. But then after that 3 years, the interest rate skyrocketed. Well, then we hit the housing collapse, and I couldn't get it appraised for enough to refinance it. And so my payments went from like $600 a month to almost $1,200 a month. So, and I still hung out. I mean, I still hung on for like another 10 years or something. But eventually, well, another 7 years after that, eventually it just got to be too much, and like the bank made plenty of money of interest off of me. They got more. They didn't get everything they wanted, but they got enough. So we let that one go back. So I mean, that's just I would much rather have my in-laws still alive and live in an apartment. But sometimes bad things happen in life, and you just have to make the best you can out of them. And that's what we did. But what I should have done when I got to that closing, and they're like, "Oh, your credit score decreased a few points. Now we can't get you the FHA loan." I should have just said, "Well, hang on, hold on a minute. I can live in my apartment a little bit longer until that credit score comes back up." But see, I bought the house that I grew up in off of my mom, and so she was looking forward to me buying it, and she needed the money to pay for her to help pay on her condo. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. But it seemed like a logical thing, like, oh, well, I'll just refinance it in the next couple of years and I'll be fine. Yeah, it didn't work out that way. But you live and you learn in life, right? And, if I had taken all the money that I just spent on stuff, right? I used to make like twice as much as I make now, and that was 20 years ago, right? So I was making the mega bucks. I was full blown network engineer, making mega bucks. I was the senior guy, right? And I spent every single penny of it. I just spent every penny I got my hands on. I was making $120,000 a year. We're talking back in like 2002, 2003, right? And that was still a lot of money. And I was going to payday lenders in between paydays to borrow more money, right? I mean, I was always broke. I always spent all my money on all this junk that I don't even have anymore. I have my Snap-on toolbox. That's about all I have from that time. If I had just saved half of that money and put it in a mutual fund, I would be retired right now. I would be retired. But you live and you learn, right? I had my truck back then that was brand new, and I had a Buick LeSabre that wasn't that old, and I had like lots of more Snap-on tools than I have now. Um, and I had like my son had all the latest game systems and games, and you know, I was renting an apartment at the time, but it just seemed like I might as well spend it. I'm gonna have more on Friday. Saving just didn't really enter the equation too much back then, and that is insane. I still have my truck too. I mean, I paid that truck off 3 times now, right? So like I got it paid off, and then I went and borrowed on it again, and I paid that loan off, and I borrowed on it again. Now it's so old they won't loan me any money for it. But the old truck, she got the 500,000 miles on it. She still runs good. She's still a good running old truck. Right now, it's got my mom's 3.8 liter Buick in it, and I'm wanting to put that engine in her car. I'm wanting to do it over at my friend's shop where he's got Lyft, and he's just been busy every weekend, and so I'm going to try again, like not this weekend, but the weekend after, and see if I can get that. She had an oil leak on her Buick LaCrosse, and I didn't get it fixed quick enough, and she ran out of oil and spun a main bearing. I went to go pick it up to take it to fix the oil leak, and I'm like, this thing seems to be knocking. It's one of them things. I mean, my mom is really hard on cars. She got 1 foot on the brake and 1 foot on the gas, and she puts that pedal to the floor every time she takes off from a light, and she stops at the last possible second every time she stops. I mean, she burns through a set of brakes in a year, and she's already had a transmission put in there where she ripped the transmission out, and now it needs a motor. She's just hard on cars. I don't know. She's a little old lady, but she likes to drive fast. It's like, Mom, just slow it down. She'll go through town, right? And like every light, you're gonna have to stop for it. That's the way the lights are timed. There are like 10 lights going through downtown, and like every time she comes to one, she stops at the last possible second, an inch away from the bumper in front of her, and then as soon as the light changes, she's got her foot to the floor, taking off, right? Tearing it up. But, I'll fix her car. I'll just fix her car. I'm smoking too much. I'm going to have to go get some more cigarettes. I don't normally smoke this much. But, got a live stream. Anybody got any questions for Tom the Frugal Prepper? We can do an Ask Me Anything. But I won't really answer anything. But I'll answer most things. Like, how is that? I forget her name now. The one girl that works with Erico, trying to figure out how she's related to Erico or whatever. You just can't get an answer. It's like, ask me anything except that. Yeah. I just don't know. I haven't seen her on his channel in a while. I think she was going to nursing school or something. I can't remember her name right now. Oh, let's see. Holding on the HELOC, invest versus payoff. Well, so I mean, I think like Hannah, that was her name. You're right, Zib. But the HELOC, invest versus payoff. Oh, so you're taking the money from the HELOC and investing it? Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I mean, I personally want to pay off debt before I invest, but I have some HELOC left, and I have more than that invested in the market, and I should sell that and pay it off. But I'm not. I mean, Dave Ramsey is probably right. You probably should just pay off your debt first, and then you can invest more. But I don't know why I do it. I just do. Um, the channels that I'm into. Um, Here lately, I've been watching this airplane guy. I forget his name now. He's a pilot. Let me see if I can open up another browser here and find him. Um, let's see. I've been watching him so much; it's got to come up in my recommendations. Mentor Pilot, Mentour Pilot. He is a commercial airline pilot, and he goes through all of these like airline disasters and accidents that have happened, and he goes through them a step by step and explains everything. And he's got a really like his content's really good. Like he could be on the Discovery Channel, right? Um, and it's really interesting. So I've been watching that lately. Um, I mean, I still watch an occasional Erico or Ivan video or some diagnostic videos, but honestly, I don't get a chance to watch those as much as I'd like to. And I don't know. As I've gotten better at diagnosis, it just doesn't seem like magic anymore, right? I'm just like I watch a video like, yeah, I would have found that. Yeah. So, um, when I first started watching all those diagnostic videos and stuff, I'm like, well, this is great. If I ever run into this car with this problem, now I know how to fix it. And now it's like, now I know how to figure out how to fix it too. It's not as big, but I like watching Matt, the Schrodinger's cat guy. Uh, I like watching his channel. He's got a paid channel too, and I got on there for a month and watched this paid channel, and it's really good. But I go through Scanner Danner's premium, and I watch those videos regularly. Like I'm kind of on a schedule of like 2 or 3 videos a week, and I have my Scanner Danner book, and I go through, and that's just a really good, refreshing type of course, right? So I do watch Scanner Danner Premium, and I'm subscribed to him, and I try to just keep 1 or 2 premium channels going. And fortunately, Matt's premium channel's not in the lineup right now. But I really like Paul. I mean, he seems like a really great guy. I really wanted to go to the meetup at the college, and then and just meet everybody that was going to be there. But then the COVID came along and they canceled it. And then they did it the next year, but it was going to be like a virtual thing. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do virtual. I want to do a real meetup. I want to actually go and see people that I know from YouTube and know from his channel and actually shake their hands and meet them. So, which I had already paid for it, but they gave me a refund and gave me all my money back when they canceled it. So that was fine. I think it was like $400 or $500, if I remember right. But people that I'd like to meet one day. Like, so I also was working with Keith, and I had messaged him on LinkedIn and said, hey, can I come down and work Staten Island with you sometime, and just see what it's like, just ride along for a couple of days. And before I got to do that, he left and moved and got a new job. So that didn't work out. People I'd like to meet on YouTube, I would like to meet Erico. I would like to meet Ivan. I'd like to meet Paul. And I'd like to meet Keith, even though he's still in the automotive industry working with scan tools or something, but he doesn't actively go out and diagnose a lot of stuff anymore. But I know he does do some stuff because he helped Ivan's wife out. Yeah, the police videos. Yeah, there's so many of those on YouTube, and it's like sometimes the police are definitely just in the wrong, right? But there's a lot of people out there that just want to antagonize. They want to go film the police station, like, oh, it's my First Amendment right, and I'm filming. No, I don't have to tell you my name. And I get it. I get the First Amendment audit thing, but um, I don't know. I don't know. The police should just stop flipping out about it and not worry about it so much. I think that's kind of the point. But they're busy. They have other stuff to do. It's like, I don't know. But I just try to avoid the police. Like I just do. I try to avoid ever having to call the police if possible, um, because it can go bad. You can go really bad. It's just better off just to avoid contact, and then nothing bad's gonna happen. But I mean, I'm not like addicted to the police. I mean, I'm always polite and respectful, but I don't necessarily answer the questions. Trying to think, like, I don't know if it was the last time I got pulled over, but it was a couple times ago. I got pulled over and coming home from Aberdeen, Ohio, up 68, and it was some kind of a drug enforcement zone because people were smuggling the and stuff up from Kentucky or something. And they pulled me over with my truck cap at the time. I had the windows blacked out on my truck cap, and so he pulled me over, and he's like, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" I'm like, "I don't have telepathy, so no, I don't know." And he's like, "Well, I pulled you over because you were going 57 miles an hour in a 55." And I looked at him, I'm like, "Are you serious?" And then, like, I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, "Is there a reason you don't have your seatbelt on today?" I'm like, "I can't answer that question." "You're not going to answer it?" I'm like, "No." "Why not?" "Because the answer could serve to incriminate me, sir." Yeah. He's like, "Oh." He's like, "So what are you out? Where are you heading today?" I'm like, "North." "Where are you coming from?" "South." "What are you out doing?" "Driving." And he's like, "Well, he takes my license and everything. He comes back. He hands me my license and says he's going to let me go with a warning. And then he's like, I was just wondering, like, what's going on with the back of your truck back there?" I'm like, "Oh, that's a truck, huh?" "Well, I noticed the windows are blacked out." Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, would it be okay if I look back there just to make sure everything's okay? I'm like, "Oh, no, thank you." And he, like, kind of hinted about it again. I'm like, I'm sorry, sir, but I don't consent to any searches. I'm like, "You've handed me my license and insurance card back and let me go with a warning, so the stop's completed now, right?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, it's completed. I wanted to talk to you for a minute." And I just, like, roll up my window while his lips are still moving, start my truck, put it in drive, and drive away. So, yeah, 12 months behind watching Scanner Danner videos. Yeah. I moved out of automotive products to container ships when that Evergreen ship clogged up the Suez. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember that. But it turned out they got it unstuck or whatever. So, yeah, this whole supply chain stuff's crazy. Can't get anything these days. You just can't buy anything. Like, I haven't seen Diet Citrus drop at Kroger's in like a year. Like, there's no Diet Citrus drop. Every once in a while, you'll see a 2-liter or something, but no cans. I just, I don't know. If I'd known I was going to be shorted out of it for a year, I would have went and bought a pallet of that crap before COVID hit. But, because I like Diet Citrus Drop better than I like the Diet Mountain Dew. But yeah, in general, everything, all the shelves are bare. I went and bought like a little vinyl patch kit for an air mattress the other day, and there was one left in Walmart. One. I'm glad they at least had the one. I guess it just is what it is, right? We'll just have to get through it. I think it's a combination of people not working, them not having the the stuff. The supply ships aren't coming in. Um, and people are wanting to buy extra stuff right now. A lot of them are like, "Oh, I want to stock up before the next wave hits or whatever." So there's a lot of that going on. Finding a laptop was a lot of fun, right? Because the chip shortage. I mean, they had an HP that I really wanted. So I bought that original HP, but then I found out that the new GM Tech Connect software requires 8 GB of RAM, and it will not run on your computer if you don't have 8 GB of RAM. It just comes up with an error message. Sorry, you need 8 GB of RAM. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to order some RAM for it. And then I got to looking, and the RAM's soldered on the motherboard. There's no way to upgrade the RAM. So I took that back. And then I was like, oh, I want this HP. It's an i7, 16 gigs RAM, terabyte hard drive. Looks really nice. And like, oh, we're out of stock on that one. And I'm just walking around like, what about that one? Nope, that one's out of stock. Well, what about the Samsung? Nope, that's out of stock. Like, just tell me what's in stock. They're like, well, we got those Lenovo's. So I ended up getting this Lenovo Yoga, which is a really nice computer. But and I don't have a problem with Lenovo's, but it's crazy. Like, they don't have any printers. Monitors, you can get them, but they're low, and they don't always have the options that you want. Laptops are hard to get. I mean, it's crazy. That the whole chip shortage thing is really just throwing stuff for a loop. I know we had to buy some barcode printers for work, and we had a hard time getting those because they were all on back order and everything. I know, like, we had a printer die at one of our facilities, and I went by Micro Center. I just need a 2D color laser printer. All out of stock. It's like, it's just crazy. You used to just always, the shelves were always loaded down. And as we come into Christmas, it's going to only get worse, right? Everybody's going to be out there trying to buy Christmas presents. It's just going to get worse. Yeah. Which I mean, I'm not really that worried about Christmas because I'll have to buy something for my son, but I'll find him something. And there's only one other little kid in the family, and I can buy him some blocks or something. He'll be happy. And then we usually just spend like $25 on one other person in the family. We like do an exchange of names. So, I mean, we don't spend a ton of money on Christmas gifts. I mean, I'll buy something for my wife, and she'll probably buy something for me. But like my extended family, my sisters and aunts and uncles and stuff, we just trade names. And we buy one gift that way, and then we buy for all the kids. And we all buy for the kids, I should say. And probably spend like $70 on a kid's present, and then like $25 or $30 on the other person's present. Except one year I made some emergency grab and go buckets and gave those to everybody for Christmas. Yeah. Jaspel's message got deleted. I don't know what. Yeah. So I don't know what else to talk about. Other than I'm thinking about getting one of those inverters that you can plug into your Ryobi batteries. But they're like $70. I'm trying to find one on clearance or something. I'm going to look around on eBay. But I'd like to be able to plug this in and get 120 volts out. I think that would come in really handy for using my laptop out in the field. Just to be able to plug that in and know that the laptop's not going to die during a software update or something. Although, normally I have the battery maintainer plugged in and running anyway before I do an update. Normally, if there's power available, or I can take my little orange generator with me and run my battery maintainer off of that. I want to say they have a 150 watt one and a 300 watt one. And I think the 150 is the one I'm looking at that's like $70, which is plenty for charging a laptop. This better be good because I'm really busy. Oh, Darren, what are you busy doing? Are you busy making wooden phone stands again? Darren Davies, somebody I used to work with. You still working at the school, Darren? Oh, 3D printing. Yeah. That's something I haven't really gotten into yet. I've thought about it, but seems like a lot of money. Yeah. Okay. I thought you worked for the schools, but you're at the city. Okay. Yeah. But Darren and I used to work back at Quinex's, and he always had really nice hair. And yeah, like it didn't work out for Darren either. I think you quit. They fired me. But good old Jack Gerbs. Have you seen like his videos he's been putting out on LinkedIn? They're kind of I mean, they're packed with good information, but they're boring. Yeah, I worked at Quinexus for like 8 years. I did some really big projects. I made them some really good money, and then they hired this cable guy, and then they hired his friends, and then they made a whole phone division or something, and then I became director of the data services, and then they took me out of that role, and I went back to being a network engineer, which I didn't get paid anymore for being a director, so I didn't mind being a network engineer again. And then like the cabling guy that they hired now was like running the whole place, and he's all like, "Well, why aren't you billing for this? And why aren't you billing for that?" Like, because I'm out fixing all this crap that everybody else can't bill them again. When you're the guy that can fix it, and you send out two people that couldn't fix it, and now it's really screwed up. Yeah, they fired me. They were just like, "Yeah, you're fired. See you later." And Jack didn't even show up to fire me. He was at Hamvention when they fired me. I'm like, I'd like to be at Hamvention, but I'm here today working, and I'm getting fired. I did make him buy me my breakfast though, because he's supposed to take you out to breakfast to fire you. It was probably a good thing that I got out of that mess because it was a mess. I guess now he's doing the security thing or whatever, which I know security is really important in the IT world, and I don't do insecure things, but I just find it exceptionally boring to read about the latest 0-day attacks and all the latest patches, and I just find that very tedious and boring. I got into working on computers and being a network engineer because I like to create things and make solutions, not sit around and play hall monitor and block everybody's web access and watch things for viruses and stuff. But yeah, that's true. I mean, you did have to get past that, like everybody was always upset when you got there, but then they were happy usually when you left and you fixed it. But it was just that type of job when you have that many companies and they're only calling you because it's broken and they need it fixed and they need it fixed right now. It gets kind of old after a while. It wears you down. It really does. Um, but you also had customers that you did projects and stuff for, but um, it was like trying to keep the old stuff running, and then you'd have somebody like Rex that would go out and pull the wrong hard drive out of an array that already had one failed drive and crash the whole server and really blow it up. And then you'd have to go out there and spend all night restoring everything back from their tape backup. And then you didn't get the bill for your time, and then they're asking you, why don't you have any billable hours? Because you hired Rex and he broke it because he doesn't know what he's doing. And then you had Tom Hamilton, Mr. Heidelberg. Heidelberg, over there, neighbor. I'm here to fix your network. He always had plenty of billable hours because he billed for every freaking thing. He's like, I took a pee. That's an hour. And you can only get so far with customers like that, ripping them off before they figure it out and they move on to somebody that's not going to charge them for taking a pee. Oh man, I remember the day they fired me. They were started calling me like at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, like, we need you to come back to the shop. We need you to come back to the shop right now. And I'm like, I'm working at Phillips Sand and Gravel, and their phone system. And I'm like, I can't leave. Their phone system's down. I'm trying to get it fixed. No, we'll worry about that later. You need to come back. And so I went and told Pat, I'm like, Pat, I'm sorry, but they're telling me I have to go back to the shop right now. And they don't care that your phone system's down. He's like, well, why do they want you back at the shop? I'm like, because they're getting ready to fire me. This is what they do when they fire people. He's like, no, they're not going to fire you, are they? I'm like, yeah, they are. So, and like, I'm driving back and I had to stop and get gas. And they're like texting me, like, where are you at? Where are you at? I'm like, I finally just called Terry. I'm like, Terry, it's fine. Like, are you leaving early today? Do you need to get me fired ahead of time or what? Like, I know I'm fired. I'm coming back, And then like, they're all like watching me, like, because they know I'm guns. So I think they think I'm gonna like come shoot them or something. I'm like, I don't know. And Tom Hamilton was all in there, being all hidely ho about it, and and Terry's like, yeah, I really hate to do this, and blah 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 blah. And then they were like, well, if we can still call you, we'll give you 2 weeks of severance pay. And I'm like, well, I got projects I need to finish up. How about I just work those 2 weeks? It's okay. And I'm like, and so then I got Job and Family Services to hire me. They were a previous customer. And, I just went straight from Quinexus to them. It's no big deal. Right. But, well, and I worked during Senta 1 day and Job and Family Services 4 days. But, oh yeah. I got in deep with the 3Com phone systems at Cincinnati Metro Housing. Holy crap. Like, I was deep in the trenches on that crap. I have people there from Massachusetts writing custom patches and software to fix the problems. And they never could get their switch working right, their core switch. It had multicast issues. And so we took that out, and then they sold us one of their new switches that were supposed to fix it. It did the same exact thing. And then I was like, okay, so I borrowed a Cisco router, a 7200. I set up the multicast on it, and it worked flawlessly for 2 weeks. No problems. Everything worked. I 3Com switched back in. It all went to hell again. And then 3Com proceeded to tell me how that's not really an accurate test. Oh, man. They never could get like the overhead paging and stuff to work right. It was a nightmare. But there was a lot of bugs that would crash that system. And then HP bought them and just threw the product away. They just about had the MBX all worked out. Like, it was turning into a really nice product. And then HP bought them and threw it away. This kind of sucks. But I mean, I got into doing the Cisco phone system when I worked at the hospital. That's a nightmare. That is just a nightmare. Like, got like 16 servers to control this phone system. It was insane. Like, that is, I'm sorry, but the Cisco phone system is a patched together mess of crap. It's not integrated at all. It's a whole bunch of different systems all trying to work together on the back end. I mean, it's worse than Mitel. I mean, Mitel is a patched together piece of crap. Personally, I really like Asterisk phone systems these days. I mean, because everything works off of one server. Yeah. So I mean, you left Quinexus and went straight to the city, and you've been there ever since. I've bounced around since then. I did my own business for a while. I did a partnership. I did work for I worked for Incentive full time there for a while. Then I went to, and then now I'm at the steel place. Yeah, so you're gonna have a nice little retirement, at 16 years. You're welcome, Frederick. Yeah, I don't know. I get bored when I work someplace for too long, and it just starts to get old, and I'm looking for new problems to solve. So, but or I don't. I'm not as much looking for new problems to solve in the computer world. It's one of the reasons I like working on cars so much now. Is it's something new to do. Computers, as long as I've been in them, I've been doing it since Windows 3.11, really since before there was a Windows, but professionally, when I first got my first job, it was Windows 3.11. And the more things change, the more they actually stay the same, right? Um, no, okay. Mm. Thanks for being a subscriber, Fred or Frederick. We have similar backgrounds. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I started out playing with Commodore 64s back in the day, and then I got into IBMs in high school, and then I was like, I really like this IBM stuff, and then I went to college for a little while, and I was working 3 jobs to try to pay my way through college, and I'm sitting in this class with some liberal instructor trying to explain why Marxism is so great and how it actually works, and communism's wonderful, and I'm like, I flip hamburgers for like 12 hours a day to pay for this freaking class, and you're going to tell me communism's great? Like, I'm out of here. So I put out some job applications, some resumes, and I got hired on as a bench tech at this place in Urbana, and I worked there for like 7 years. And then the boss just kind of went crazy, because I built a couple of home computers for people, like off of some parts I got offline. I built one for my mom, and I was building one for somebody else, and he started telling me I was competing against my own job and all this kind of crap, and just was personal. It wasn't any. I wasn't going to a customer, right? And so I just up and quit that job. And I looked at maybe going into business for myself, but then PC Solutions hired me, and then PC Solutions became Quinexus. And then Quinexus fired me. I went to Job and Family and Incenta. And then Incenta hired me for like 20 hours a day, or however many hours I could work, and gave me my health insurance. And then I did my own business for a while. So yeah, I've just been all over the place. I have. Um, and then like Incenta, I don't know. I guess I just really wanted to make more money, and they used to let me work from home, and that was great to be able to work from home. But then they had some auditor guy come in because they were losing money, and basically he said I should come in there every day. And so I'm like, well, okay, but if I have to come in every day and take this drive and this commute, might as well go get a job where I'm making more money. So that's when I worked at the hospital for a couple of years. Hospital was a nightmare of a mess. I mean, it was just, they had a really big data center. They had 3 SANs, hundreds of virtual machines, and it spread across an old data center. It was just a complete cluster, a complete band-aided together, patched up cluster. And every time they got somebody that started to figure it out and work it out, they would fire them because the head guy, the CIO, would screw up, and then he would have to blame it on somebody and fire them so he could keep his job. So it was a big mess. I got out of there and went to work where I'm working now, which is only 5 minutes away from my house. I went from auto mechanic to actually working at a dealership to IT for 20 years, MCSE, CCNA. No, burnout since 3 ago. It's all going to cloud now. It is all going to cloud. I mean, that cloud's the new thing. I really like where I am at now. They don't like cloud, so that's good. Um, which there's something to be said for keeping your data in house and keeping it very secure and not just having it exposed to data breaches. It definitely is. But yeah, it's all changed. I mean, like now, like the device that you use to access your stuff doesn't even matter, right? I mean, you can use a Chromebook or a MacBook or a PC. it just accessing apps out on the cloud mostly. The device is inconsequential. Um, yeah, the IT department is an expense, but and one day they'll probably farm it out, right? They'll probably outsource it to India. You know, right now they don't want that, but it'll only be a matter of time before somebody gets in charge. That's like, oh, we can get rid of these IT people and save money, right? And they'll farm it out, and I'll be retired by then. I don't care. But I went from being a network engineer. I was a CCNP, route switch. I had didn't have my MCSE, but I had my MCP. But I think it had expired. I went ahead and got my Network Plus and my A Plus, and I was a Novell CNE back in the day. But and I got a bunch of other little like Wi-Fi certifications and stuff. But um, yeah, I mean, I really love Cisco equipment. I love working with routing and switching, and I actually love working with their virtualization, like their Nexus with Fabric interconnects and stuff like that. I actually really enjoy the work. The problem is when you're the high level network guy, everybody calls you all the time, 24/7, wanting answers to what's wrong. Even though it's some Windows problem on some workstation, they go straight to you and they want you to fix it, And so now I'm just a senior IT support specialist. I try to stay out of the networking part of it. I let the networking guy do that part of it, and I just fix the computers. And that way, when the network goes down, I'm like, you have to get a hold of this guy. Yeah. Like they still haven't given me like the passwords to get into the switches and the routers, and I'm 100% okay with that. But I'm happy as long as I'm fixing stuff that's broken. It doesn't matter if it's a Windows computer, a machine out on the shop floor, or whatever. I like to fix things that are broken. Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on where you work at. I mean, um, it just everybody in IT is mad at you until it's fixed, and then you're the best. Then you're their new best friend, right? Right. As soon as it's fixed, but they're just frustrated that their computer's broke, and they just got things to do, and they don't want to take the time to work with you to fix it. Just how it is. And I'm a pretty easygoing guy. I don't care if somebody's mad at me. I'll take it. Yeah. At the end of the day, I still get to go home. I think that's a lot of things. It's a lot of it is learn how to divide things, right? Just because something is an emergency to somebody else doesn't mean it has to be an emergency for you, right? Right. And learning that, well, I know this is an emergency now because their printer's broke and they waited to the last minute to print out this presentation that they're giving in 15 minutes. But that's not my emergency. I'm not the one that didn't plan ahead, right? I'll do everything I can to help you, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. Yeah. I don't know. In a way. And so he says, Frederick says, network is like fixing a GM with a Ford powertrain and a VW wiring and Bosch ECUs. Kind of. But the world of networking is a whole lot more standardized than the world of cars when it comes to programming and modules, right? Like, you got Ethernet, you got networking, you got IP address scheme, you got established protocols that you're working with. On GMs and Fords, they put their CAN bus on different wires. They're just totally different, right? And so, that's one of the frustrating things about working on cars. You got to have like 20 different J boxes to program them on. Um, but there's some things in the car world that are kind of generally the same, right? Pull down circuits and stuff like that you can test. So. But as far as the programming side of things, like reprogramming modules and just even simple things like programming keys, every one of them is different. Every one of them come up with their own way to do it. I always tell people there's only two kinds of cars in the world. There's General Motors and all the other foreign crap out there. For the right to repair, so GM definitely has contributed to some anti-right to repair movements and legislation and stuff. And I just don't get that. Because GM only has to give us the tools to diagnose emissions-related problems. But you can go on the GM's website. Yes, you have to buy a J-Box, but for $40, you can buy 2 years worth of programming for a VIN number. And they give you access to everything, to every module in that car, right? And they don't have to. Places like Hyundai, they don't, right? I mean, Hyundai will technically let you download the software, but they won't give you the factory tool that they use to program it. They make a tool available that still runs on Windows XP and locks up and will brick all the modules, right? But, or maybe it's Nissan I'm thinking of. But anyway, yeah, it's Nissan. But like GM at least gives you access to all the software to buy all the modules, and they make parts available at a reasonable price. And they make the software and the programming available at a somewhat reasonable price. But there's the explanation fixing cars. Yeah, I would rather fix a car than a computer, hands down. I get much more satisfaction out of it. I get happier end user as a result, right? And it didn't used to be that way. It used to be like, you go fix somebody's computer, you were the hero. But nowadays, back when I had a computer at work, the really geeky people had a computer at home, but they didn't have tablets and smartphones and laptops, and like everybody has computers these days, right? And computers just like become this like pain in the butt thing, and people aren't real appreciative about it, even if you fix it. And there's not really any money in fixing them anymore because you can just throw it away and buy a new one. But I like fixing cars more than computers these days. But you can't make as much money fixing cars as you do working in computers. But yeah, it's definitely funner. Definitely more interesting. But, yeah, I mean, I've been doing the networking. I remember back in the Novell days, Novell used to run on IPX, SPX, not TCP/IP, but there was a TCP/IP elective, and you had to take an elective, and that's the book that my boss bought. So I learned TCP/IP, and I'm thinking like, I took that test the first time, I failed it. I took it a second time, and I barely passed it. And I'm thinking like, that's good. I got that crap passed. I'll never need that TCP/IP crap again. Yeah, I was wrong. Yeah, TCP/IP is the way the world went. And now you say IPX, SPX, people are like, what's that? What are you talking about? But yeah, there was other protocols that had routers and routed traffic between different stuff too. But like nobody knows that anymore. And yeah, the whole world's like IP. And the whole IP version 6, I mean, like I've got my IPv6 silver, and I had to learn IPv6 to pass my CCNP labs, and I got it down good enough to get that stuff, but I just don't use it every day. Like on an internal network, you still run an IP version 4. The last year and a half, I was doing GroupWise. Year and a half at QI, I was doing GroupWise exchange migrations. Yeah, that's what it turned in there towards the end, was just getting people off of GroupWise and getting them onto Exchange and getting them off of Novell servers and switching them over to Microsoft. Like Novell just got painted back into a corner. And Microsoft started out as a real clunky solution back in the NT server 3.51 days, a little better in 4.0, right? But by the time they were getting to Windows 2000, they were really starting to get their stuff together. And then like 2003 server was awesome, and they just kind of kept adding that functionality. And Microsoft did their typical, like, we're going to join with Novell, we're going to fully support them, we're going to include all the network protocols in our servers and our clients so that you can connect to Novell. And then pretty soon people were like, well, why are we still running Novell? Let's just switch to Microsoft. Yeah, ZenWorks was cool when it worked. But yeah. Subnet mask and routing protocols and BGP, man, ooh, that one's a bear, right? So I was told on my CCNP route test that you really got to know your BGP. So I really studied the BGP hard, and like I dedicated like an entire book to just learning BGP and doing all these BGP labs and learning all this BGP stuff, and I still just touched the very little tiny surface of what BGP is, right? I went and took my CCNP route test. There wasn't a single freaking BGP question on the whole test. But for those of you who don't know, BGP is like the routing protocol that they run on the internet so that things know how to communicate. Like, and that's how your traffic gets from your house to Google, right? And it takes care of all the routes on the internet. And you have routing protocols inside of a network too, on bigger networks, corporate networks. But the ones out on the internet are huge, right? Oh, I definitely like Novell Network was nicer than Active Directory, but Active Directory won, Um, I mean, the real back in the real was 3.12 when you had a binary, and it was really easy to set up users and rights with inherited rights masks and all that stuff on your server. And it kind of started to fall apart when they went with NDS, right? But then they kind of got that back together, and intranetware 5 point something, 5.11 or something, was a really nice, good, solid, stable. Oh, it was 4.11. It was a really good, nice, stable product. And then they get the network 5, and it got messier, and network 6, it kind of started falling apart. Right? Oh yeah, I had a BlackBerry back in the day. Yeah, Blackberries were nice, but they didn't win. I don't think it was Android that really killed BlackBerry. It was iPhone that killed it. And then Android came along and kind of took some of iPhone's market share away. But anyway, what time is it? It's 8:30. I got to get off of here, get back in the house. I just tested out my new laptop and my router. My old wireless router died out here. And the way I knew it died is because I have all these little electric plugs that automatically turn on and off the bug zapper and the shed light and everything, and it just started staying on. So I came out here and I looked at the wireless router, and it was just like I had little lights would like blink for a second and it'd go back out. So I went ahead and bought a new, bigger, faster one for in the house, and took the one from in the house and put it out here. I got my Ubiquiti wireless like backhauls going back to the house and out to the garage. But try to keep internet access everywhere. Yeah, I'm running the old Ubiquiti. I mean, so I really used to like Ubiquiti a lot until they started going to this new cloud-based crap, like that manages your access points and all that. I don't really play that. but I'm running the old Nano Station M5 locos. Well, I got one NSM5 and then two NSM5 locos because I had an NSM5 just like from forever ago, and I bought two locos. But you just program those directly on the web interface and build your link. So I had to turn the speed down on the whole thing though. I mean they'll technically go up to like 300 or something, but I had to turn down to 100 because the NSM5 doesn't speak the same protocol as the NS will at the 300. But yeah, but yeah, I mean I still have. I mean I'm assuming it's still in use. The between the Coons building and the Schwinn building in downtown Dayton, I think there's still two nano stations up there connecting those two buildings together. Ubiquity stuff just runs forever and ever and ever, and it works really well. But I just haven't gotten into their new cloud-based crap, like this cloud management thing that you run for all the new stuff. Oh, yeah, the cloud key. That's what it is. And so, like the one of the schools I do some work for, they had a couple Ubiquity things and the cloud stuff, and and we upgraded the access points at work. Um, we stayed with the same brand as Ruckus, but we just went to newer access points. So I got work to donate those access points to the school, and then we went and put those in, and they work really well. And they just program through the web interface. So, oh, you got an LTE mode. Oh, so you don't actually have internet because it's in the park. I see. Yeah, yeah. I don't do too many live chats or streams. I really don't. I was just testing out my laptop, see how it works on the wireless back here. But yeah, yeah, the LTE modems. Yeah, that's the other thing that I do for my job now. Is I manage a couple hundred different mobile devices for the company, which can get it real exciting. I'm really good at migrating your data from one cell phone to another. Let me tell you. And I was doing like some of my own iPhone battery and screen replacements and stuff, but anymore you get them so cheap, you might as well just give them a new one. And then we use a place here in town called Cracked Up, repair done, because he's really good. The last one I tried to put a new screen on a 6S, and like I used the spudger tool to pick the cable off, and somehow I knocked off this little tiny capacitor. It's like the size of a grain of sand. And I took it over to Cracked Up, and they soldered a new one on there. But yeah, I'm pretty much done with my eyes anymore. I'm pretty much done doing that little tiny stuff. And it takes so long, you might as well just pay somebody else to do it or get a new one. All right, I'll talk to y'all later. I'm out of here.